Okay, in terms of the stuff, deadlines, unchangified except for, of course, quiz 4 and 5, which deadline today instead of last week because we didn't finish Aristotle until earlier. But the other deadlines remain the same. So exam 1, quizzes part 2, October 19th. Exam 2, quizzes part 3, November 16th. Exam 3 for quizzes part 4, December 7th. Dates should look at infamy. And exam 5, deadlines on that Friday.
You said exam 1? You said, 4 and 5 you said.
Oh, 3 and 4, December 7th, exam 5, December finals week.
But
Exam.
you said something's deadline today.
Oh, quizzes 4 and 5.
Oh.
from part 1.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't finish Aristotle
Oh, I'm like,
last week.
you threw me, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yes, they were the quizzes for part 1, but we didn't get to finish through Aristotle until Wednesday, so I extended the deadline for 4, which covers Aristotle, and 5, which covers everything, which may not have Aristotle on it, because it's all random. Then for the paper, draft, deadline November 9th, plus 5, November 14th, merge deadline November 21st, and desperation deadline December 8th. Before pressing on to more of our good dead friend St. Thomas Aquinas, anything about your previous stuff to be that needs more stuff. Okay, so last time we're looking at our good dead friend Thomas Aquinas, and we saw that the teachings of Aristotle, the writings, finally arrive in Western Europe by way of the Middle East. Now, there was a shift in European thought from otherworldliness. It was nicely symbolized or metaphored by Plato to more concern about here and now, which is nicely symbolized by Aristotle. And of course we see this throughout human history. When things are bad here, people tend to look more to an afterlife or the future, or to the distant past, time when things were or will be better. When things are getting better, people worry less about the past and the future and the afterlife and focus more on now. Yeah, and Aristotle is more of a here guy, and Plato's a up there guy. And so it's a shift in which you have these two philosophical metaphors or exemplars also matching the shift in people's perspectives. Now, one concern about how you know stuff, and of course, whenever you talk about anything, especially metaphysics, it's always fair to ask, how do you know this stuff, especially when it's really weird, is the question of how do we know this stuff? Now, our good dead friend St. Augustine took the view that humans sinned, original sin, Adam and Eve, Apple, probably iPhone or something involved as well. And that's the apple from the original sin, right? Right there, that's what they're talking about.
Excuse me, before you know what page are you
Let me see.
27?
I'm 31.
31. Okay.
So for Augustine, his belief was that sin damaged our reason, and therefore what we need to do is, of course, clear up that sin so we can reason properly. So metaphorically speaking, sin is like gunk in the gears or malware in the computer, and so we need to clear that out. Now, Aquinas' view, he rejects the idea that our reason has been crippled. Now, morally it's problematic, so we're all full of sin and evil, but our reasoning is working okay. So for him, we can know stuff about stuff through reason. You don't have to go through the purification of faith in order to reason about stuff. Now, Aquinas essentially is the Christian evolution of Aristotle. We used my metaphor before. If Aristotle made a pagan cake, Aquinas comes along and says, "This is a pretty good cake, but let's put another layer on top of that cake that's made out of Christianity." And so essentially you end up with a double layer cake. So more cake, which is good. Now, Aristotle and Aquinas following him embraces empiricism. The idea that what you know about what's real ultimately has to be grounded in the senses. And again, you can use scientific instruments, etc., but it's got to ultimately grounded in the senses. The mind for him, and one important question both in metaphysics, what is the nature of the mind, and epistemology, what do we know from the beginning, is this. Aristotle and Aquinas both embraced the idea of the tabula rasa, the blank slate, such that,
What you call it?
oh, tabula rasa, which is just Latin for blank slate or blank tablet. Tabula rasa, which also sounds like a good name for an alternative band. Now, this idea held to by the empiricist is that we have no innate knowledge. So whatever we know about the world, we have to acquire through the senses. To use a metaphor, back in the not super early days of computing, but I guess like the mid days of computing in the 80s, if you bought a computer, like a Trash 80 or a VIC 20 or a Commodore 64, when you plugged it into your TV and turned it on, you just have a cursor. It did nothing out of the box. If you wanted to do something, you had to load a program into it with a floppy disk or a tape player. The Trash 80 used a tape player, and the programs were stored on tape. You would play and you would read them, Yeah, just like with the old modems. I've seen old shows, the modems would make sounds and squeak. That's the squeaking and squawking gets translated to the modulator. Modem means modulator, demodulator. So it's turning analog to digital and digital to analog. So, good times. So technically a cable modem is not a modem because it doesn't modulate or demodulate, but we just call it a modem because that's, it plugs in and gets you the interwebs. So the old computers, again, you turn them on, blinking cursor, nothing there. Anything you put in, you've got to put in from the outside. So that's a pretty good empirical model for the empiricist. The mind is blank, like an old VIC 20, you got to put stuff in there. Now the rationalists take the view that there is stuff built in there. So they would take the view the mind is like a modern computer. Like when you got your Apple computer and turned it on, hopefully you just didn't get a blinking cursor. You've got Mac OS 10 in there, whatever version they're on. I think like Sneaky Weasel or Angry Ferret or whatever. I know they're all cat names, so Bad Kitty, I guess. And then you get all this other stuff in there, pages and numbers and so on. Likewise with phones, So the rationalist model is the mind is like a modern computer. It's got all of this stuff pre-built into it. So Aquinas, like Aristotle, rejects that. So if he was using a metaphor for the mind, with computers it'd be like a VIC 20 or a Commodore 64, or just an empty hard drive.
So his point of view doesn't even include the way babies cry for food, like that innate survival instinct? Or does he think it's just complete, like nothing?
He would probably say that there's like behavior, like instinct would be like you're making noises and respond. So things like feeling pain and stuff is built in, but it's not an idea. But it's a good point because people who believe in ideas push stuff like that. Like how do they, if there's nothing in there, how do infants even know they're hungry? If they were truly blank, the way like a computer was blank, they would do nothing. They would just like die. Because they need at least, to use a modern computer metaphor, a computer needs at least some type of operating system to function, to do anything.
So when they make blanket statements like that, and to me, it's like, well, I know this is not right, because logically speaking, there's gotta be something there to prompt the next step. Why, the question is why they do it?
Well, in a way they're right, because there are two options. Either there's something in there or nothing. So that's true. And if you take it seriously that you can only get stuff through the senses, then there's gotta be nothing in there. And again, the point you raised is a good one. Empiricists don't deny that babies cry. They don't deny that they have the capacity to feel pain, because as Aquinas and Aristotle said, you do have the intellect. It's like so in a way you could say that it does have an operating system. You got the
I was
intellect.
about to say, that's like the operating system.
Yeah.
That's already written.
Yeah, and then
Now, all the other stuff you have to put in,
Yeah.
but the basic operating system is there.
yeah. So a better metaphor would be it's like the computers they used to get in the 90s. You have Windows, or actually the Mac would be a better one. You have like just the Mac system, or if you install something like all you have is the operating system, no
Yeah.
programs. And so
I can buy that now.
yeah. So they would say, yeah, you've got the intellect, so you have the basic operating system, but nothing else. So just enough to function. But again, people who believe in any idea say, hey, that's still cheating. You still got stuff in there. And they'd say, we don't mean, like you said, it couldn't be totally empty, because then it couldn't even function. So I think the intellect is both passive and active. It's passive because, to use a metaphor of like a camera, if you had a smartphone or laptop, you get a camera, microphone on it, and it passively pulls in stuff. And the odds are there's probably some spyware on there, put on there by Facebook, or actually Facebook is spyware, the government or the Russians, or all three, just pulling in all this information. That's how they often catch some drug dealers, is they turn on their phones without them knowing it and just record all the stuff through it. And any phone or computer can do that. Which is why when you see people who are techie or want to appear techie, they always put a piece of electrical tape over their camera, which is a way of saying, I'm cool and in the know. Now, he thus believes that's how we get this information about stuff. Now, like our good dead friend Aristotle, he also embraces this hierarchy of being, also accepts Aristotle's concept of actuality and potentiality. So we see here how Aristotle, influences Aquinas, and then this, of course, influences everything Aquinas affected, which is pretty much most of Western thought. Now, going back to Aristotle, we saw that this notion of prime matter, which is pure potentiality, again, in the contemporary metaphor, like the spool of plastic in a 3D printer, can be made into anything, well, almost anything. The forms, of course, for Aristotle and Aquinas have actuality. They are, going back to the metaphor of the 3D printer, they are like if you're 3D printing, a little plastic dragon, they're the 3D coordinates for that. Now, God, of course, on this view, has got no potential. Now, normally if you say of somebody, if you tell someone you got no potential, is that praise or insult?
Just an insult.
Yeah, because you say they're
worthless.
Yeah. But in the case of God, and if someone knows this notion of pure actuality, they would say, thank you. Of course I have no potential, because I'm pure actuality. Be a good t-shirt, pure actuality, no potential, all actual. Also a good potential for a brand, all actual, can be a good brand name, trademark. Probably some type of terrible drink.
You have to explain to everybody.
No, you don't explain anything.
Just let them read it and
You just
go
let them
on.
read it. And they'll scratch their head.
What does that mean? No potential.
That's right.
No, just put pure actuality, that's better.
Yeah, pure actuality. Now, this means that when stuff changes, it goes from potential to actual, or actual to potential. It loses that, that status. Now this creates a bit of a problem for God, because if God is pure actuality, that means any change in God would be for the worse. So God can't change. And so one problem that medieval thinkers ran into is the problem of how does God do stuff? How does he change? And they came up with this clever notion called eminent containment. You might have heard of eminent domain, which means the states can steal your stuff, which it does anyways. But eminent containment is not stealing your stuff. It's like virtualization. If you, for example, you can go and if you want to run Windows on your Mac, you could install Windows, but you could also get a program like Parallels and run it. And so you're running Mac OS, but you're running a program that runs Windows. So it's as if you have a Windows computer. And if you want to be really old school, you can get one that emulates old console games like Centipede and Asteroid and run that. So it makes your computer or your phone do what the old consoles did. So if you really want to play Asteroids, or you just download the Asteroids, probably easier. And so I came up with this notion that God could eminently contain change, so he could, in modern terms, be running like a virtual thing within himself, where he doesn't change, but it can do all the change stuff, as if he was changing, but he's not. But then, of course, people say, that's BS. So you might imagine a lot of stuff about God, people say, here's how we solve the problem, and people say, that's total nonsense. Now, like Aristotle, he also accepts this great chain of being. And there's a hierarchy in the world from zero up to God. And of course, the God part is Aquinas, because Aristotle didn't have God. He had the unmoved mover who cares not for us. Not in the negative sense, he just doesn't care. Now, this, as Aquinas sees it, does help answer a classic problem in religion, which is problem of evil. Why is there bad stuff like Ebola, and, cancer, and, all the terrible things, like lobster flavored ice cream. Lobster, there is, it is a thing. I mean, you can make. No, it's a thing. They sell it in Maine.
Lobster flavor.
Lobster flavor ice cream.
They might have made it taste good.
Oh, Maine. You can get it in Maine. But you can make anything you can put into ice cream, you can make into ice cream.
Ice cream does kind of sound good, right?
Ice cream is good.
I'm saying it sounds good right now.
Yeah, lobster ice cream. Yeah, it sounds kind of weird.
Have you tried it?
God, no. No, I mean, lobster is good. It'd be like having it'd be like having steak ice cream.
Steak ice cream.
Or it'd be like having hot ice cream.
It might
What
make it
was that
taste good.
thing, Burger King did the bacon flavored ice
Yeah,
cream?
Fish flavored ice cream.
Yeah, fish flavor.
Fish fillet with ice cream.
Yes.
You want ice cream? Yeah, you want ice cream, but you also want meat. And maybe, yeah, I mean, something I guess it could be worth tasting, because there's some things that may sound terrible that could
Just
be
get
really.
some ice cream and then put it with the meat that you want.
Yeah, you could put in some meat chunks.
Do that.
That's a bit much.
It is a bit much.
No, I'm not saying put it together. I'm just saying eat the meat first and then you got the dessert.
But then your dessert is tasting like your meat.
Well, that way you can do it all at once.
No.
Don't eat it all at once now.
You might as well not have the dessert if it's gonna taste like cake. You gonna see your.
I ain't saying eat it all at once. That's not how you go to a restaurant. Eat your food first and then you ask for dessert.
Yeah, but if I'm eating a lobster, then I say, can I have one of those lobster flavored ice cream?
No, I'm not talking about no lobster flavored ice cream. I'm talking about just regular ice cream.
Oh, regular ice cream.
Yeah, you eat
No, I'm
your
thinking
meal
about-
and then later on you ask for dessert, like how you go to a restaurant. I say you can just do that rather than try to mix a lobster ice cream.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Check out this broccoli ice cream.
They do make that too.
Broccoli.
Because you can make anything. If you can throw it into a container and mix it, you can make it, you can take any food, you can make it into an ice cream.
Are they putting sugar in?
Yeah, I mean, you can make any type of ice cream. You can make an ice cream that's like sugary with lobster, or you can make something that's like well, it tastes like lobster. You just like milk and cream and just lobster. Maybe butter, like they're butter probably. Yeah, so it's basically, it's like licking a frozen lobster.
I mean, y'all say that now, so y'all try it one day.
Yeah, it could be good, could be good. Although everyone I've spoken to who's tried it has not liked it. They've regretted, and they're expensive because it's lobster, and they've regretted their choice. Yeah, so it's another-
So they were like $20 for ice cream.
yeah, so that,
It's nasty.
yeah, so it's terrible, and you spend a lot of money. Which is, yeah, so lobster ice cream's down there somewhere. Although probably some people will like it.
Legitimately making up.
Yeah, it's real. If you go to the Googles, you can
I'm
find
on
it.
YouTube.
Yeah, people dying. So this explains how there's bad stuff, because you gotta have everything from 0 to God. And later thinkers use a metaphor of numbers, because if you take a math class, does the math professor say, yeah, there's an infinite number of numbers, but there are some that are in there because they're terrible, like 7 is just not in there. No, I mean, there's no gaps in the numbers. No, they don't say like, yeah, here's the hole in the number where this used to be. And so reality is also going to be full. So why is there terrible stuff? Well, one answer is, well, if it's more than 0 and less than God, it's got to be in there. Yeah, because otherwise it'd be holes in reality. It'd be missing stuff. Can't have that. Got to fill that up. So that's why there's lobster ice cream. There must be all the flavors must exist. Someone likes it.
Somewhere in life, there's a strange
keep making it, so
person that you will not
It's
find.
great.
Mhm.
Well, you grow up, this is
I don't like it, but I'll try.
That's like some
That's
shit
what
where
they say, bro.
it's
It's you taste it.
random exotic.
Yeah.
It's not really ice cream though, like, it was like a vegan recipe. You have like almond milk and frozen bananas, so you can have that creamy texture.
That may be ice cream that's real too.
Exactly.
You say it's not should be here, but it's like,
Today's
what
time,
actually
ice
tastes
cream.
pretty
Exactly, that's true.
But it's a good mix.
Right.
Chicken waffle. Oh, chicken waffle.
That's better.
You're like, oh, that's all right, you know, chicken and waffle.
Everything good. A lot of things like bacon and waffles are also good. Bacon and waffles combination. Yeah, well, a variety of meats can go with waffles. I mean, the way they're like a taco thing, you can put anything in there. Because waffles themselves aren't, unless you make them with sugar, they're not super sweet. So you could have like, you put like ground beef in there, some lobster ice cream. Just everything. It's
Yeah, you
all.
went down to the bottom.
Yep. So here we are. We're down to low levels, so lobster waffles. Now, going back to your question about you raised earlier with Aristotle, like where are the angels? Aristotle, of course, hasn't gotten it, but Aquinas does. And he argues for angels because the same reason we have to have stuff that's terrible, we're less than God, so there's something between us and God. And those are the various types of angels, ranging from the angel that's just below God, Lucifer, of course, all the way down to the most menial, the lowest of angels, and then us. And then below us, of course, are all the animals and plants, and then all the other the lobsters. Way down there. And this also means that the universe is knowable, because it's got a structure and hierarchy to it. Now, also for him, this is where the purpose comes in, because the unmoved mover, because there's a question like, how does that, what does it do? Is it like shoving things around? And I use the metaphor of like moths being drawn to flames, or like a coach or a great athlete who they don't know you, they don't interact with you, but you see them and you want to be like them, like people used to want to be like God. And so everything wants to be like God. So things are striving to be the best they can be, or the worst they can be, depending on who they are. Now, another implication of this, where metaphysics impacts ethics, is that it lays out an objective foundation to moral values. there is objectively better and worse. One implication for this is, of course, in the things that you can eat. Aquinas actually explicitly addressed the question of the ethics of eating meat. Now, we often think today that this is something new. That the idea that eating meat is morally questionable. We think that originated in California during like the 60s or the 90s or something. But as we saw, it goes back to Pythagoras. He believed that you shouldn't eat animals because they could be your relatives, the soul. So Aquinas considered that question because the Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill," and animals are alive, and so are plants. Now he went back to Augustine to get the argument, which comes from Aristotle, is basically this: we're better than animals, so we can eat them. Animals are better than plants, so they can eat plants. And angels are better than us, so they can eat us.
Could you imagine?
I can imagine. There's actually a sci-fi story about that. They didn't make any reference to Aquinas, but they had, the way they had it were angels were predators and would consume humans after they died. So scary. There's a double horror story. Because whenever you have things that are normally good, presented as the most terrible thing. That'd be like finding the Easter bunny is like a serial killer, sneaks in, kills children, kills people with eggs. They found all the bodies with eggs stuffed in their mouths.
That egg is really a bomb.
Oh, a bomb, yeah. Yeah, even scary.
Well, you said he was killing people with eggs.
The Easter bunny. No, Easter bunny is probably not evil.
Oh.
But one way to make things more horrible is take things that are normally good and make them, make them the monster.
Mm-hmm.
Like they did a movie with Santa Claus, like they had a serial killer dressed up as Santa Claus. And that did not go over terribly well. People were really upset by it.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, Google it.
Snowman.
Yes, they did a Snowman one too. Like it was like Jack Frost.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Santa.
Yeah, there's one.
Oh, what?
Yeah, if you do a, it's actually because it was like a psychopath dressed up like Santa Claus. It was called like Bloody Silent Night, Bloody Night or something. And then people were like, yeah, you shouldn't do. Yeah. Even I was like, I like horror, but I'm like, no, you should probably not. Don't ruin that. Now, one, sort of grim implication of that view. Okay, if you want to eat meat, it's a standard argument. I'm better than a cow, so I can eat cows. Now, of course, the terrible side, or perhaps another terrible side, depending how you feel about eating animals, is people use this on other people. Because whenever people want to do terrible stuff and want to justify it, they say we're better than them, so we can do terrible things to them. They are not people, or they're lesser people. And that's as current as today's news. If you, for example, when you have places where there's religious or ethnic cleansing going on happening today, and they interview people, that's what they say. They say these people are inferior, they're worse than us, and they're filth, so we can, not only can we destroy them and hurt them, we're obligated, we're doing a good thing. And that's what the Nazis said. It's not only we're reluctantly doing this, it's we're doing right. Yeah, so that's kind of the terrible side of having a hierarchy. Geese, my nemesis. They are terrible birds.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Geese.
Geese are awful, deliciously awful.
They're below us, so can you?
Yeah,
Below us.
and they're annoying, so I don't feel bad about killing them. I do not feel bad at all, because they bring it on themselves. Even some vegetarians I know, they're like, yeah, they probably deserve that. They deserve what they get. Now, another concept that Aristotle had stolen by Aquinas is this notion
Just
of...
put a fist up with some verses.
Yeah, they know what they did. I have a few enemies, and geese are among them. I take that competition seriously.
No, they're
Just
horrible.
do you have?
Birds are terrible.
Not only I used to.
Used to kill geese when you hunted.
I would try, but they because they would fly overhead really high because they're evil and smart.
What's the name of that game? Is this with the gun and then you shoot the bird?
Duck hunter?
Yeah, you remind me of that.
So the geese would fly way overhead out of gun range, so they understood the concept of shotgun range. Wanted to kill him.
I'm down with
The only, it was only the lack of range in the shotgun.
Well, what did you hunt?
Ducks, the duck hunter, and deer. And the deadliest
You
game.
killed Bambi.
I've actually never shot deer. Because deer hunting is actually really hard. Because they're pretty smart and they're good at hiding and they know when deer season. Yeah. Otherwise they'd be around.
Well, what's the biggest one?
I've never shot a deer.
Did you didn't go hunting?
Have you ever
I went
interacted
hunting, I
with
just didn't,
geese?
no, I went hunting, I didn't go catching. I went hunting. I was hunting for stuff.
I couldn't tell you what we.
No, it's like fishing. Fishing doesn't imply you catch anything, you're fishing. They don't call it catching, they
That
call it
was your
fishing.
purpose of going fishing.
Did you like say?
You sit in the boat and you drink.
Yeah.
That's what everybody does. Or the dog can drink. Or you stand in the water and drink.
I'm still on what you did when the birds passed by. You were just like, my enemies, and then you just kept
Yeah, you gotta have enemies. And they're good enemies. And no one feels bad. When I say I hate geese, no one ever says, by a terrible person, they say, hey, he's probably right. So you want to have enemies, you always want to have enemies where you say, I hate those things, and everyone's like, yeah, I hate them too.
You can't put up with a swan.
Yeah, somebody goes, oh, swans they're mean too,
Very mean, but they're super.
but they're pretty.
Exactly.
So they
I
get.
can't see you going hunting and don't kill them, don't even shoot them.
Oh, I killed ducks. I didn't kill the geese because they were out of gun range. I would have killed them, but they were too far. I shot at them, but
Oh, you didn't shoot the deer because you never seen one to shoot.
during hunting season, I see them all the time when it's not hunting season. During hunting season, because there's season for bucks and you need a permit to shoot does. So if you see a doe and you get a permit, you can't shoot it.
Were you eating them? Or like, what
Oh yeah, you
Of course.
He said, okay, all right.
yeah, because
Of course.
You're gonna shoot it and leave it there?
yeah, that'd be terrible.
Dead.
And so for
You
for
never
Aquinas,
seen
you'd
it?
be right.
I've never eaten deer.
No, I haven't.
It's
It was
delicious.
good, man. Some people who did.
It's
As far
super
as I think
delicious.
I win is like,
Huh?
I think as far as I win is duck.
Both of them was good.
No, no, you went too far.
Yeah, so one argument that people make morally for the metaphysics is, well, we think it's wrong to do that to humans. Say they're inferior, so we can mistreat them. People argue that even if animals are equal to us, we still shouldn't, unless we want to accept the idea that anything that's less than us can be, because in a way the same thing
It's
justifies.
still true, it's the same principle.
Yeah, justifies Nazism. The same thing that justifies eating meat also justifies genocide.
What do you think about like how they justify the dog, killing the dog, like eating a dog?
Eating dogs?
Yeah, eating
Oh.
other countries versus the United States.
Oh, totally opposed to eating. Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Because if we accept we can eat animals, dogs are animals, we can eat
Yeah,
them.
they do
But-
do that in other
Yeah.
countries.
Because we, in the West, probably because of the British influence, people consider dogs pets and not food. Where in other cultures, dogs are
Free game.
pets and food, which is weird, but, like people who, they'll raise cows and pigs and give them names and then eat
Oh,
them.
yeah, that's twisted.
Yeah.
That kills me.
Yeah,
But
so,
if you can't eat an animal, then you can't eat the plants either, because all of them are alive.
Well, plants, they
Yeah.
have no consciousness.
Listen, that's.
yeah, it's the same moral argument.
Yeah.
That plants are so inferior to us that it's okay. And there are scientists now, and we'll talk more as we talk about, the philosophy, the metaphysics of mind. There are scientists now who claim that plants actually do have cognitive states. Because, well, they are.
What are we gonna filter feed it to?
Well, no, because the thing is that they are alive.
Yes, they are alive.
Yeah.
They're alive. And so it's not insane to think that they would have,
That actually makes sense.
yeah, feelings. And, I mean, the main argument against them having cognitive abilities is, with animals, you can find neurological structures. So you can,
But you can also in plants.
you can find, we don't find nerves, but you do,
There's the veins in the.
they do have veins.
That's
So
what I'm
plants,
saying.
you're not including like vegetables or like fruit, right?
Yeah. Those are-
Yeah.
those are
So
good.
if it's wrong to eat the animals, it's wrong to eat the
No,
plants.
Vegetarians are
they're
murderers.
not.
Yes, it is.
It's like, come on.
Yeah, so it depends on, we'll talk about this in,
That's,
in the later parts of the course. What is it that gives beings moral status?
Plant
Like,
lives, man.
fruits
Yeah.
and vegetables are meant to be like edible.
Well, some people say the same about
The
animals.
animals too.
Yeah, they're meant to be delicious. The Bible says so,
Yes.
actually.
What?
So it mentions in the Bible that all animals are given to us as our
Food.
food. So the main arguments for eating animals is the metaphysical argument. They're inferior to us, so we can eat them, which raises questions we'll see later about metaphysics and ethics, which is what gives things moral status. So why would it be okay to eat carrots, but not okay to eat cows, or why would it be okay to eat cows but not people? And the usual moral arguments, hinge on, if you want to be metaphysical about it, moral stat, like what qualities does the thing have? Like we're conscious, animals are less so, plants are not. So we can eat, it's bad to eat animals, maybe, but it's okay to eat plants. And really bad to eat humans, if you eat people. The other main argument people give is the religious one. They reference the book of Genesis and how things were given to us to eat. And then people also try to make like health arguments that people need the iron and stuff, nutrients in meat. And then vegetarians point out correctly that you actually can get everything you need without meat. It's a little more challenging. You know, like your iron would be 12, but doable. It's doable. You just have to be careful, or you'll die of veganism. It's a terrible way to die. No, actually, when I cut down my meat consumption, it actually made me anemic because I wasn't getting enough. Because before I was I ate a lot of meats, and then I was cutting down on my meats. I thought I was getting enough iron, but I wasn't. So I was like, man, I feel really tired. And they're like, yeah, your iron's super lean. So the lesson is only bacon can save us.
They got like plants and things with iron, or like fruits and stuff like that.
There's some-
Vegetables are iron, right?
There's some. The problem is that your body absorbs basically animal iron more efficiently. So the iron you can absorb iron from plants, but the form of it is you absorb it less effectively. Also, what you're eating with the iron can affect your absorption. So the thing that kind of screwed me was calcium. I believe it was calcium. Calcium impedes iron absorption, and I was getting most of my iron with cream of wheat, or if my friends call it, Yankee grits. But I was putting milk on it. So I'm eating the iron, but I'm taking the calcium, so but basically I might as well not have been eating it. Yeah, so the nutrition is really complicated. So it's different, even for things that occur in plants and animals. There's different types for things, especially like with iron being an example. And certain things you eat can impede or improve your absorption. So if you're trying to get your iron, don't drink soy milk or milk or orange juice with calcium, because you'll lower your absorption. So you have to either drink you need calcium.
Or almond milk.
Yeah, or even anything with calcium. So you have to you need calcium. So to get your calcium at other times than when you're getting your iron. So, or just eat a lot of stuff. Just like eat tons of meat, tons of milk. It'll be fun. Now, Aquinas then uses his methods that he got from Aristotle to use Aristotelian principles to get to God. So we see here the evolution or change, depending on how we look at it, from using Aristotle's metaphysics just to get to supernatural stuff, non-religion. And we see Thomas Aquinas taking Aristotle, and again, taking the layer cake and putting Christianity on top, which is how, the foundations of Christian metaphysics, arose. Now, God, of course, critical part of Western metaphysics. One of the core questions is, does God exist? What is God, and does this being exist? Now Aquinas lays out 5 arguments. Now the first way essentially gets to an unmoved mover. And here's how he does it. He begins with his arguments by something that is being empiricist, something empirically observable. So the first step is there's stuff that moves. Now is that true?
Say that again.
He begins by claiming stuff moves. True?
Oh. Stuff is moved.
But if it's moved, is it moving?
Not unless you move it.
Right, but if it's moved, it'll be moving. Yeah, so if stuff is moved, it's moving. Now, there of course was our good dead friend Parmenides. Again, his name sounds like a cheese, but he's not so much out for that. And his student Zeno, the famous paradox of motion, like about the infinite regress. Now, with the exception of Parmenides and Zeno, and a few others, pretty much everyone accepts that stuff moves, at least in some manner. Now, he contends, so the first one seems pretty reasonable. He also claims that whatever is going to be moved, it has to be moved by something else. And the question would be, why? Well, this goes back to his notions of potentiality and actuality. To move, or be moved, something first must be movable.
This also includes the wind
Oh, you include everything.
and the weather.
Yeah, include everything for Aquinas. So to be able to be movable, something has to be movable. Has to be, on Aristotle and Aquinas' metaphysics, it would be potentially moving, but not actually moving. Now, as he sees it, the way stuff changes, the way things occur, is things go from being potentially something to actually something. So an example of fire, if you want your food, cook your bacon, you take your bacon, which initially is cold, but potentially hot, and you put it on in the frying pan, which is cold but potentially hot. You put it on the stove, turn on the fire, and the fire, which is actually hot, will make your pan actually hot, and your bacon actually hot. And then, of course, it will cool down, going from being actually hot to potentially hot again. So far, so good. Now he claims, and this is critical to his argument, that something cannot be both actually and potentially something in the same way at the same time. Why not? Well, looking at one way, it seems gotta be true. Like something can't be actually hot and potentially hot, because potentially hot means it's not hot. Now it could be hotter, potentially hotter, but if it's hot, it's not hot. Now you could also use the example of like a phone. The battery cannot be actually charged and not charged at the same time. Now, of course, it can have, more charge, but it's either has charge or, zero, some, or none. Now, he claims, thus, something can't both be moved and mover. Why? Because to be movable, something has to be not moving. Otherwise, it's already moving. If it's already moving, then it's already moving. So it can be moved more, but it can't be moved because it is moving. But if it's, so something that's not moving can be moved by something else. If it's already moving, so it's, no need. And you can also use the analogy, again, going back to the charger. Can a phone charge itself? Could you get like a USB cable and just goes around, it's like, oh, I'll take care of this. No, it wouldn't work. So it's impossible for something to be both charged and, to be charger and the charged and the charger. So likewise, he reasons that whatever is moved must be moved by something else. Again, going with the analogy of the smartphone, whatever is charged by something else. Now he claims if everything that's moved is moved by something else, this can't go on to infinity. There's got to be, because otherwise there'd be no motion. if me moving the backpack, is my arm moving it, the muscles moving, the cells, activating, the mitochondria doing their stuff, the energy I got from what I ate, etc., tracing it back to the sun, which put the energy here. The sun, of course, came from, wherever the sun came from, the formation of the solar system. If it went on forever, there'd be nothing moving. It'd be like, you can imagine like a chain of dominoes, infinite chain of dominoes. Well, it can never fall because you would never have the first domino to flip to get it going. You'd just be setting up your dominoes forever. So there must be some first domino flipper to get all the dominoes going, to use the metaphor. This, for Aristotle, was, of course, the first mover, the unmoved mover. Now, Aquinas is well aware of that argument. So what he says is, he doesn't say, this is God. He carefully says, this everyone understands to be God. Knowing that we have to make an inference from, there's got to be a first mover, who could this be? God. So he takes Aristotle's unmoved mover and repaints him as God, or reskins him. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the first mover. Next time, more Aristotle. So have a good weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.